Why educated people, or should I say, why very educated people, you find them struggling in business, you find them struggling financially, and they're the hardest people to be advised. Have you ever asked yourself, if you come across these people who we call them the book smart, they are professors, they are engineers, they are doctors, they are teachers, then you dare talk about investments and what have you, or you generally see them struggling. Sure, you can see them, sure, they are eating, they're drinking, they're doing other things. But if you were to zoom in terms of the wealth creation, they usually have a challenge. Of course, I'm not saying all of them. Should I say a huge chunk of them? Why, or what is the reason behind it? And of course, I stand well to discuss this video, or rather this topic. Having been interacted a lot of them, then I have something to say. This is good, just in case you're watching me for the first time, and this is that video I'm gonna talk about it, okay? Don't forget to subscribe, make sure that you hit that like button and leave a comment on the comment section. Tell me where you're watching me from and what is your view on this, okay? Now, there is one thing I'll let you know. Remember, we are talking about, let me say, the elites, yeah? The elites, or should I say very educated people. Why do they struggle financially, and you find them also are very poor, by the way? Why? There's one thing I'll let you know. When it comes to any idea, or should I say any successful venture, it all has a beginning. For example, if you see me here, I was once a kid, isn't it? There was times I was actually struggling. I can't be able to feed myself and all those things. I was, all the process until where I am right now. Are we together? Now, what happens? There are three phases of creation of wealth, or three phases of creation of a business, or should I say a successful business. Now, the phase one, this is basically when we talk about idealization. Idealization, okay? This is where the idea comes in, or should I say conceptualizing of an idea, or whichever. You think of something, and let me tell you one thing, these people who are very educated, this is their stronghold. They are very good at coming up with ideas. They are very smart. They can articulate on paper. I'm telling you, they can give you the wonderful business plan ever you've never seen. They will give you the things and the way they talk, they are formed. Then you tend to confuse the language with them having the ability to run a business. So when it comes to the first phase, this is the phase one. This is the idealization, coming up with an idea, to conceptualize an idea. There is a joke that says, just like everyone has a head, so everyone has an idea. So you find these people, they are very strong in this particular area. So you interact with what we call the graduates. They have the ideas, all the ideas on earth. They interact with Gen Zs. They interact with young people. They have a lot of ideas. Even older people who are formed, you find that they have a lot of ideas. And the wealth is not created by just you standing on this face. You need to go to other two phases. Now, what happens here now, after you've actually come up with an idea, of which these people are very good at, you need now to come to the second phase. Now, the second phase, this is now where you talk about analysis of the idea. Analysis. This is where now you do the feasibility study, the commercial viability of the business. This is where now you start doing the analysis of where to start, how much does it need, where can I start, all those kind of things. Let's say you come up with an idea of shoemaking here. Shoemaking, okay? Or let's say water packaging, okay? Let's say you come up with an idea of water packaging. Now, this is where now you start doing the analysis. Which kind of machines do you need? Which kind of labor do you need? Which kind of regulations and permits do you need? The commercial viability of the business. Can the business be productive? Can it be profitable? And by the way, what are the minimum operational cost of this particular business? When can we say, when we make this kind of sales, we are in business, we can be able to pay ourselves, pay operational cost, and have some reserves and all those kind of. This is generally where you do the analysis and all those kind of things. And most of the people call me at this particular phase. When it comes to the idealization, they can do it by themselves. So they call me at this particular phase to analyze such. By the way, I offer those services, and that is my number, so you can pick it up and shoot me a call. So now when you come to phase two, this is where people are doing the commercial viability. This is where these elites get stuck. This is where they never get out of. And the one thing I'll let you know, when it comes to the analysis, this is what they do. They overanalyze. They do what we call the analysis paralysis. You know why they do so? Because they are used to making sure that they are First of all, let's do anatomy of the education that we have on earth. First of all, the education we have, the normal mainstream education, it discourages you working with other people. It tells you these are your questions, not these are our questions. This is your questions. Handle them alone and by yourself, and you give us the right answer. They don't tell you give us the answer. And in the world of business, just an answer will work, and you cannot know whether it will work or not until you execute that particular answer for you to know whether it is working or not working. Now, what happens with these guys is that they overanalyze things. They look all the possible areas where this business can actually fail. I tried to interact with most of the guys whom we schooled in the university. We thought of starting a business. I'm telling you, we had a hell on earth. We all formed on the table, and I realized these guys were being affected by, of course, I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I realized they were being affected by the education that they're having. So in this particular phase, you find that they analyze a lot. They look at all the possible areas where this business can actually face. And let me tell you one thing, whenever you look for something, you always get it. Now, they fail to go to the third phase, which is the most important one. And this phase, third phase, this is what we call the execution phase. The execution phase, okay? This execution phase, basically, this is where now you have an idea, you actually do the feasibility study. You don't have to get the 100%. That's what the people get it wrong. Let's say you want to start the water packaging business. You don't have to get all the factors right, 100%. No, I always tell people, if you can get 75% factors right, get into the business, find out on how you can be able to match the 25%. This is why I always tell people, you can't get the best location on earth with the best security, with the best landlord, with the best regulations. You know, you can actually be in a country whereby the government is horrible. It is a sort of a good environment for the business, but the country is making money. If you're there, you can actually be making money. You can go to a place whereby you get a very nice location. Let's say you have actually rented a warehouse or a show or a go down or something like that, but the landlord is actually a guy over hell on earth. It's very hard to handle the guy or something like that. Maybe, like, there are always some things. There's some things like you need to kind of forego so that you can be able to do what? To start a business. And I always tell people, even if you go buy a book, with the 1,000 pages talking about pottery, you learn about it like the 10 years before you start that pottery farm. There is something that you always learn about that business once you get into it. So this issue of analyzing so that you get 100%, that you're 100% sure, there's nothing like 100% sure when it comes to business. Remember one thing, the moment you are starting to invest or a business, you always invest what we call an affordable loss. Affordable loss. And that's why whenever it comes to starting of a business, it should be approached in a very systematic manner, such that if someone tells me, Joseph, I want to start a business worth 200K, I always tell them, if you can, don't try to start a business worth 200K. Work with 150K, take the 50K, have it as an emergency fund for that particular business. First of all, you ask them, this 200K you want to start the business with, is this where you're going to be getting things to sustain you? Your food, your shelter, your clothing, your transport, your rent, your utility, your water, your everything? If that is the case, then you're not qualified to start a business worth this amount of money. Probably you start half of this, half the other money, because what people do is that you start a business, then immediately you become a dependent to the business in their first month. It's like giving birth to a kid and expect them to go to high school and of course graduate and you celebrate for the hard work that you've done. It doesn't happen that way. And if it happens that you get into a business and a miracle happens and you're favored and you have the grace and business actually picks up, sure, I think there is the time to, accumulate. Let me show you something here before I even continue. Let me show you. I hope you've written something on this. Let me show you how things work here. Let's say this is your graph, okay? Let's say this is the minimum operational cost of your business. This is what we call the operational cost of the business, okay? What happens is that this is where now you're making the revenue. This is now on this path or this particular side, let's is called the revenue, okay? Of course, this is time, okay? Now, what happens when you make cash? This is cash, you make it. Let's say this is the minimum, the operational cost of the business. Let's say you've realized that if I'm packaging water and I sell things worth, say, 200,000, it is enough to pay for the rent, for the rent, for the licenses, to pay the labor, to pay myself and the business owner, because you need to pay yourself. Therefore, the moment you make a revenue rises to that particular point, anything that is above that, that's the money that should actually be put in the reserve of the business. Now, what happens? These things keep on going like this. At times you find you're making a very good profit. At times you realize that the things are actually down. At times you realize this is how it was going, just like that. So what happens in these phases, these are negative phases. You are not even making enough money to sustain the business. This is now when you rely on what you've been making when actually the business was operating good. This is what we call the reserves. Okay, so anyway, when you're doing all this research, one day I'm gonna make a whole of a detailed video to explain what that means. Anyway, I'm just touching by and moving to the next point. Anyway, that is exactly how it happens. So you find these guys, they never go the third phase, and the third phase, this is where the execution phase happens. So you find these people who, the elites, or the very educated guys, they really get into this phase because this phase is very scary. This is where now you start thinking, you stop thinking about, starting that business worth X amount of money, but now going to withdraw that money and start buying the things that are needed. Another problem that you find these people do on the analysis phase, you find somebody has been employed. Maybe let's say he was an HR, maybe he was, let's say, a financial advisor somewhere or whatever the thing it was. And then they usually think, they try to bring the job experience to the world of business. And that is exactly not happened. When it comes to the world of business, you have to perceive or view it from a very different angle. Otherwise, if you bring the mentality of a job into the business, and then of course becoming too formal when they're running the business, if you go to the most successful people, they usually don't have those a lot of things that you guys say, I don't know, this has, of course they have the systems that are reliable, but they're not that formal. They aren't that formal, and that's why you find that the C students usually employ the A students, because as C students in the first place, they be like, you know what, I don't have time to do all this analysis and what have you. When I do the basic ones, they're the basics one, regardless of you being domed or not, you have to research about them. So they end up just executing the business. And you find you can have two people here. You can have person A and the person B. This person A is the elite one. This one is just an average one. So what happens when this guy is spending time and time to analyze, these guys has actually gotten started. Got started. Now what happens, there's some of the things that this guy is learning inside the business compared to this guy. This guy is still on the theory part. This guy has already started. So what happens, what I've realized with this elite or these very educated guys, they spend a lot of time analyzing. They spend a lot of time looking for something that is not, or the possible areas where this business cannot work. And in that process, oh my goodness, I'm telling you, they end up messing up a lot of things and they never even start any given business. And then they usually come up with this assumption that, hey, guess what? If you write yourself a very good business plan, if it is working on paper, then it will work on the ground. So once they try to, bring forth what is on, do you know, by the way, you can write a business plan. And I actually tell people, as much as you're writing a business plan, don't take a lot of time, preparing the business plan. Go on the ground. Do you know you can actually have a business plan? When you're going to execute, you realize that you're gonna just borrow very few things, the rest you just leave them behind. It is true, because what you've actually gotten on the ground is far much different compared to what is written on the what. Sometimes business plan can tell you you need to employ 5 people up front. Then you get into the business. The business is shouting, the rooftop is telling you 5 people in this business is actually excess labor. It cannot sustain. You only need 2 people. What do? That's when we say, as a business person or as an entrepreneur or as a leader, should I say, because those things go hand in hand, you have to have the ability to make some of the decisions that are very tough for you to actually go ahead and do that particular business. So what are my takeaways on this particular video? Simple. If you are an elite, if you are very much educated, first of all, keep aside what you've learned in school. At times that you cannot just truncate it into the real world of the business. At times you need to understand, Another problem I realize also with these elite people is that how can I say this? Some of them, they believe that they know everything, so they don't find any essence of working with other elite people. You might be good at one area does not mean necessarily you are better on the other area. You need people to combine these ideas so that you can be able to go ahead and exercise it. So basically, that is just but a nutshell of exactly why I realized that most of the very educated people, they struggle financially. And of course, another thing, these people who are elite or very educated, they are not wired to be entrepreneurs. Most of them are wired towards offering those services, you know, from an employment point of view. Let's say you've been educated as, say, you know, a pathologist or whatever the thing it is. For them, they believe that money should be given after them being employed somewhere. So telling them to get into the world of business, it becomes very, very, very hard. And the lastly about these elite people is that the system that they got into their head as far as the education is concerned, which is great and good. If you're there, just continue, but be smart to understand that it is not revolving or evolving with the time. It should catch up with the time as the time goes by. There is no way we can just stick to one traditional way of solving problems. Yes, we are having a diverse issues coming in. And yeah, I hope I did the best I can on that particular video. If you would like me to make a part 2 of this, indeed I can do that, because I have a lot to discuss on this. And one day, God willing, we're gonna go ahead and discuss about this business and what kind of view. And by the way, even if we discuss this a whole year, there are still things that you need to learn once you get into the business. You will never learn. Even if I come here and I spend a whole day explaining to you how to become a successful content creator or a YouTuber, there are things that you still learn once you get into that. There's things you can't learn just here theoretically. You have to get into that so that you'll be able to understand what I'm talking about. This is Kid Joseph. Don't forget, that's my number in case you need my services in one way or the other. See you in the next one.